The HOA president called 911 because I bought a lake. An entire lake. And apparently that made me a terrorist threat to community safety. Right now, 3 police boats are surrounding me on my own dock. Officers have their hands on their weapons. Delilah Winterbourne is screaming from shore that I'm armed, that I threatened to flood the neighborhood. I'm holding a coffee mug. The lead officer shouts for me to step away from the water like I'm about to weaponize my lake. Behind him, Delilah is waving papers and shrieking about federal violations and community safety. What she doesn't know is that I spent last night reading 150-year-old federal waterway law. In about 30 seconds, when I show these officers my deed, she's going to discover she just called the cops on a federally protected waterway. The smell of gunpowder from their flares mixes with my French roast. This should be interesting. What would you do if your HOA sicked armed police on you? Tell me where you're watching from. This gets wild. Let me explain how I went from peaceful retiree to armed standoff in 72 hours. I'm Marcus Hoffman, 52, just escaped 20 years designing HVAC systems for corporate overlords. My grandfather left me enough from his Nebraska farm to buy something quiet. No meetings, no deadlines, no people. The listing said distressed sale, 3 acres, 1950s cabin, 12-acre private lake. When I saw Lake Serenity, sunlight dancing on water, so clear you could count pebbles 20 feet down, I wrote a check on the spot. Should have asked why it was distressed. Moving day. I'm unloading my grandfather's wooden canoe when gravel crunches behind me. A white Lexus SUV with a blessed license plate parks sideways across my driveway like she owns it. Out steps Delilah Winterbourne, 58, tennis-toned, blonde highlights sharp enough to cut glass. Her smile belongs in a shark documentary. Marcus, welcome to Willowbrook. The smell of her perfume, expensive roses mixed with something chemical, hits me like pepper spray. I'm your HOA president. We need to discuss community standards immediately. She's staring at my canoe like it's roadkill. Lakefront properties require special oversight, she continues, clicking her gold pen. The previous owner, poor Mrs. Patterson, had so many compliance issues before she relocated. The way she pauses on relocated makes my stomach drop. This dock needs immediate permitting review. That canoe violates aesthetic guidelines. And I smell fish. Fish in a lake. Dead fish. Environmental hazard. We'll need water quality testing. I just stocked this lake 2 weeks ago. The fish are healthier than most people. Mrs. Winterbourne, I own this lake. Her laugh sounds like ice cracking. Oh, sweetie, you own access rights. Lake safety falls under community jurisdiction. She handed me a business card. Rick Castellanos, environmental compliance. He'll be inspecting everything. That night, I call Mrs. Patterson. She's in assisted living now. Her voice is shaky. They said the lake was contaminated. Made her pay for tests every month. When she couldn't afford it anymore, they said she was endangering children. She just couldn't fight anymore. Day 3. A certified letter waits on my doorstep. Emergency violation notice. Unauthorized watercraft storage, $500. Unpermitted structural modifications, $500. Environmental hazard creation, $750. Total, $1,750. Payment due in 48 hours or legal action will commence. My hands shake reading it. $1,800 for owning a canoe. I call the HOA hotline. Delilah answers on the first ring. Mr. Hoffman, we try to work with you. Work with me. You fine me for fish existing. Environmental compliance isn't negotiable. Rick found several concerning issues during his inspection. What inspection? When? Last night. Emergency authority permits immediate access for safety concerns. The line goes dead. I check my security cameras. Timestamp shows Rick and another man on my dock at 2 a.m. taking water samples and photographing my canoe. That's when I start reading my deed word by word, including exclusive water and mineral rights established in the Federal Territorial Survey of 1887, Section 442B. Navigable waters of Lake Serenity under federal commerce jurisdiction. Federal jurisdiction. I drive to the county courthouse, hands still trembling from rage. Rosa, the records clerk, pulls up the territorial files. Your lake's federally classified, she says, squinting at century-old documents. Any interference with your water rights violates federal law. HOAs have zero authority over federal waterways. What kind of violations? Civil rights violations. Federal conspiracy charges if it's organized harassment. Walking back to my truck, the autumn air tastes like revolution. That evening, Delilah returns with Rick and a man in a cheap suit carrying official-looking papers. They march onto my dock without invitation. "Mr. Hoffman, we're here to discuss your options," Delilah announces. Rick's environmental report shows serious contamination issues. The lake needs immediate remediation. Estimated cost, $40,000. Rick nods gravely. Might be easier to just sell to someone who can handle the liability. I look at these three vultures circling my dream and smile. Actually, I've got a better idea. The next morning, I wake to the sound of chainsaws at 6 a.m. Through my bedroom window, I see Rick and two other guys cutting down the massive oak tree on the property line, the one that shades half my dock during afternoon fishing. I throw on clothes and run outside. "What the hell are you doing?" Rick doesn't even look up. "Emergency tree removal. HOA voted last night. Safety hazard. Could fall on community property. That tree's been there for 60 years. Exactly. Overdue for removal." The smell of sawdust and diesel exhaust fills the morning air. My beautiful, quiet lake sounds like a construction site. I call the sheriff. Busy signal. Call again. Finally get through to dispatch. "Ma'am, they're destroying a 60-year-old oak tree without my permission." "Sir, if it's on the property line and they have HOA authorization, we don't handle property disputes. You'll need to resolve that through civil court." By the time I hang up, they've cut the main trunk. 60 years of growth crashing into my lake, sending waves across the water that scatter every fish for miles. I take photos, video, measurements, document everything, but the damage is done. That evening, Delilah shows up with paperwork. "Sorry about the confusion. This morning's tree removal was scheduled, but we forgot to notify affected residents." She handed me a bill. "Your portion of the removal cost, $3,200. "My portion? You destroyed my tree." "Actually, survey shows the tree was 6 inches onto HOA common property. All residents share maintenance costs for common areas." I grab the survey she's waving. It's dated yesterday. Fresh ink. Suspiciously precise measurements. "This survey is fraudulent, Mr. Hoffman. There are children in this neighborhood." That's when I noticed the mini twist. While I was arguing about the tree, Rick was taking water samples from where the oak fell into my lake. What's he doing? Testing for contamination. Fallen trees can disrupt lake ecology. If we find problems, environmental remediation becomes your responsibility as waterway owner. The trap clicks into place. They create the contamination, then charge me to fix it. "You contaminated my own lake to frame me." Delilah's smile could cut steel. "Mr. Hoffman, we're simply following environmental protocols. Can't be too careful with water safety." After they leave, I call Agent Morgan at the FBI. They're manufacturing evidence. Cut down my tree, dropped it in the lake. Now, they're testing for contamination they created. "Do you have proof the contamination is artificial?" "Just common sense. Lake was pristine yesterday." "Mr. Hoffman, we need more than common sense for federal charges. Give me documentation." I hang up feeling defeated. They're always one step ahead. But that night, I remember something. My grandfather taught me about water testing when I was 12, farm ponds, irrigation systems, livestock safety. I still have his old test kit in the garage. I sneak out at midnight, take baseline water samples from 3 locations, where the tree fell, upstream and downstream. The water chemistry tells the story. Elevated tannins and bark debris near the fallen oak, but nothing toxic. Natural decomposition, not contamination. I emailed the results to Agent Morgan with timestamps and GPS coordinates. Her response comes back in an hour. "Excellent work. This shows their contamination is normal tree debris. Keep documenting." Next morning, Rick returns with official-looking equipment. "Water quality inspection, Mr. Hoffman. Standard procedure after environmental disruption." I watch him work, taking notes on everything. He's using cheap pH strips instead of proper chemical analysis. His official testing kit looks like something from a high school chemistry set. But here's where I spring my counterpunch. Rick, what's your EPA certification number? He freezes mid-sample. My what? Environmental consultants need EPA certification for water quality testing. What's your number? We work through licensed laboratories. Which laboratory? What's their certification? Sweat beads on his forehead that has nothing to do with the morning heat. Look, this is just preliminary testing on a federally protected waterway without proper credentials. That's a federal crime. I pull out my phone and start recording. For the record, can you state your name and EPA certification number? Rick packs up his fake equipment and leaves without another word. That afternoon, Janet Morrison calls again. Marcus, 3 more neighbors want to meet. Delilah has been threatening everyone. We're ready to fight back. The revolution is spreading. The secret meeting happens in Janet's yoga studio after hours. 5 neighbors show up, all looking like they're planning a prison break. Harold from accounting, thin, nervous, keeps checking his watch. Rosie, retired teacher, brings homemade cookies and a binder full of HOA violations. Tom and Linda from the corner house arrive, separately, like they're afraid to be seen together. Delilah's been systematically targeting anyone who questions her authority, Janet whispers, even though we're behind closed doors. The studio smells like lavender and rebellion. Harold clears his throat. She's been skimming from the HOA funds. I've been tracking it for months. Small amounts, but consistent payments to Rick's consulting company that don't match any approved work orders. How much? $47,000 over 2 years. The room goes silent except for the hum of Janet's space heater. Rosie opens her binder. Violation notices all suspicious. Mrs. Patterson got 17 citations in 6 months before selling. The Johnsons next to you got 12 before they moved. Always the same pattern. Small violations escalating to impossible fines. Tom finally speaks up. She threatened my landscaping business. Said she'd spread rumors about shoddy work if I didn't give her friends and family pricing on community projects. What kind of projects? Rick's projects. Driveway repairs, tree removals, property assessments. All overpriced, all unnecessary. Linda nods. They tried the same thing with our retirement party last year. Rick claimed our outdoor lighting violated dark sky ordinances. Wanted $3,000 to retrofit lights we'd had for 10 years. I'm starting to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about my lake. It's an organized shakedown operation. We need evidence, I say. Real documentation. Harold pulls out a USB drive. I copied all the financial records before they locked me out of the system. Payments to shell companies, inflated vendor invoices, unauthorized expenses. That's when my phone buzzes. Text from unknown number. Stop the meeting, or we call code enforcement about illegal commercial use of residential property. I show everyone the message. Janet's face goes white. How do they know we're here? Tom points to the window. Across the street, Rick's pickup truck, headlights off, but engine running. Someone's watching us through binoculars. We're being surveilled. This is bigger than HOA harassment. This is organized crime. The next morning, I wake to find my water line cut. Not broken. Surgically severed with clean cuts right where it enters my house. There's a note zip-tied to the pipe. Water contamination risk. Service disconnected pending environmental clearance. I call the water department. Sir, we didn't authorize any disconnection at your address. Someone cut my line and left a fake notice. That's vandalism and fraud. This time, Deputy Williams takes it seriously. Mr. Hoffman, this escalated from trespassing to property destruction. That's felony territory. While he's documenting the damage, my neighbor Bob from across the lake waves me over. 60-year-old retired electrician. Been here since the community started. Marcus, you need to know something. That tree they cut down, it wasn't diseased. I climbed it myself last month to install a bird feeder. Solid as granite. Can you testify to that? Son, I'd testify against Delilah in hell if it meant getting my neighborhood back. That afternoon, Agent Morgan calls. Mr. Hoffman, we ran background checks on Rick Castellanos. He's not licensed for environmental consulting in any state, but he is listed as co-owner of 3 LLCs that have been collecting payments from HOAs across the county. How many other communities? 17 that we found so far. Same pattern. Create violations, demand expensive fixes, pressure residents to sell. My lake isn't the target. My lake is just the latest battlefield in a countywide property fraud scheme. Agent Morgan, what do I do now? Document everything. We're building a RICO case, but we need more evidence of organized activity. That evening, I'm installing a new security camera when I smell something wrong. Not pine trees or lake water, gasoline strong enough to make my eyes water. I follow the smell to my boathouse. Someone's poured gasoline around the foundation and left oil-soaked rags near the electrical panel. One spark would turn the whole structure into a bonfire. I take photos, call the fire marshal, call Agent Morgan. By the time they arrive, the gasoline smell has dissipated, but accelerant traces are still visible under UV light. Fire Marshal Rodriguez shakes his head. Someone wanted this building to burn, but they wanted to make it look accidental. Professional job. Agent Morgan examines the scene. Mr. Hoffman, they're escalating to arson. We need to move faster. My phone buzzes. Another unknown number. Nice boathouse. Shame if something happened to it. I show the message to both investigators. The fire marshal's radio crackles with another call. House fire on Maple Street. Possible arson. That's Tom's house, the landscaper from our meeting. Tom's house is still smoking when I arrive. Fire trucks everywhere. Red and blue lights, painting the neighborhood like a crime scene. The smell of charred wood and melted plastic hangs heavy in the October air. Tom stands in his driveway holding a coffee mug, staring at what used to be his garage. His landscaping truck, his livelihood, is a twisted metal skeleton. Started in the electrical panel, Fire Marshal Rodriguez tells me quietly. Same accelerant pattern as your boathouse, but this time they finished the job. They called 20 minutes before the fire. Said this was a warning about community cooperation. Who called? Delilah said the HOA board voted to revoke my landscaping contract for unreliable service. Then she hung up. 15 minutes later, my garage exploded. Agent Morgan arrives as the fire trucks are packing up. She examines the electrical panel, takes photos of burn patterns, interviews Tom about the threatening call. This is domestic terrorism, she tells me. They're using arson to intimidate federal witnesses. But here's the mini twist I didn't see coming. While we're focused on Tom's fire, Delilah's making her real move. I get home to find county officials posting notices on every tree around my lake. Environmental hazard zone. No public access. Official letterhead, official stamps, official-looking everything. The lead inspector, a tired man named Peterson, handed me a clipboard full of forms. Mr. Hoffman, we received reports of contaminated water and unsafe structures. Until environmental assessment is complete, this area is under county quarantine. Who filed the report? Anonymous tip through our environmental hotline, but the evidence package was very thorough. He shows me a 3-inch binder, water test results showing dangerous bacteria levels, structural engineering reports claiming my dock is an imminent collapse risk, environmental impact studies proving my lake threatens groundwater for the entire community. Every single document is professionally formatted, officially stamped, and completely fabricated. These are fake, I tell Peterson. Sir, these came through proper channels with proper certifications. Until you can provide counter-evidence, the quarantine stands. The beautiful irony hits me. They're using fake federal authority to block real federal authority. I call Agent Morgan. They've quarantined my entire lake based on forged environmental reports. Do you have the original water samples from your grandfather's test kit? Yes. Get them to an independent lab immediately. We need certified analysis to counter their fake reports. I drive to the State University lab with water samples and soil samples, paying for rush analysis. Dr. Sarah Kim, the environmental chemistry professor, examines my samples under electron microscopes and mass spectrometers. Mr. Hoffman, this is some of the cleanest lake water I've seen in 20 years. Pristine bacterial balance, no chemical contamination, excellent oxygen levels. Where did you get these reports claiming contamination? I show her the county's evidence package. She flips through it, frowning. These test results are impossible. They show bacteria levels that would kill every fish in the lake, but your samples show a thriving ecosystem. Someone either tested different water entirely or fabricated these numbers. Can you prove that officially? I can provide certified analysis that directly contradicts every claim in these reports. While I'm waiting for the lab results, Harold calls in a panic. Marcus, they're auditing my taxes. IRS showed up at my house with boxes of documents claiming anonymous tips about unreported income. Anonymous tips from who? They won't say, but the timing's suspicious. Right after I gave you those HOA financial records. Janet calls an hour later. Code enforcement shut down my yoga studio. Claims I'm running an illegal business in a residential zone. I've had proper permits for 3 years. Tom calls that evening. Insurance company is refusing to cover the garage fire. They say it's under federal investigation, so they won't pay until criminal charges are resolved. I'm sitting on my dock, the one spot not covered by their fake quarantine signs, watching the sun set over water so clear I can see fish swimming in 15 feet of depth. The reports claim this water is toxic waste. That's when it hits me. They're not just targeting my lake anymore. They're using government agencies as weapons against anyone who supports me. My phone rings. Agent Morgan. Marcus, we traced the source of those fake environmental reports. They're coming from a company called Environmental Solutions, LLC, registered to an address that doesn't exist with EPA certifications that were digitally forged. Can you prove it? We're building the case, but they're escalating faster than we can investigate. How many people in your resistance group? 5. But they're all under attack now. They're trying to isolate you before making their final move. Stay alert. That night, I dream of clear water turning black, fish floating belly up, loons calling across poison silence. I wake to the sound of chainsaws again. I'm standing in the ruins of my boathouse, sifting through what the electrical fire didn't destroy. When I find it, the fire missed one corner, the old wooden filing cabinet my grandfather built. Inside, water-damaged, but readable, are the original 1887 land patents, not photocopies from the courthouse. The actual federal documents with wax seals and territorial governor signatures. My hands shake as I read the fine print I'd missed before. The smell of ash and burntwood makes my eyes water, but I keep reading. Lake Serenity designated as Federal Navigation Waterway under Territorial Commerce Act Section 847. Said designation grants riparian owner exclusive federal protection against interference with navigable commerce, including but not limited to forced sale, eminent domain seizure, access restriction, or environmental quarantine without federal court order. I read it 3 times. Federal protection against forced sale, against environmental quarantine. Everything they've done to me is a federal crime. I'm about to call Agent Morgan when my phone rings. Harold, voice shaking with terror. Marcus, you need to see something. Meet me at the old McDonald's on Route 9. Come alone. 20 minutes later, Harold slides into the booth across from me, looking like he's aged 10 years overnight. He pulls out a manila envelope with trembling hands. I've been digging deeper into the HOA finances, he whispers. It's not just skimming. It's not even just fraud. He spreads out bank statements, wire transfer records, property deeds. Marcus, they've done this to 17 other lakefront properties in the past 5 years. Same pattern. Harassment, fake violations, forced sales. I know about the others. No, you don't understand. Look at who bought all those properties. I scan the deed transfers. Every single property sold to different buyers. Lakeside Development, Waterfront Holdings, LLC, Serenity Properties Incorporated, Mountain View Acquisitions. Different companies, I say. Same owners. Harold points to the corporate registrations. Every single company traces back to Delilah Winterbourne and Richard Castellanos. They're not just running an HOA shakedown. They're running a real estate empire. The scope hits me like ice water. 17 properties. Average purchase price, $80,000. Average resale price, after environmental issues, clear up $450,000. Total profit over 5 years. Harold's calculator shows $6.3 million. Jesus Christ, Marcus, there's more. His voice drops to barely audible. 3 of those 4 sales were elderly residents who died within 6 months of losing their homes. Stress-related health failures. The weight of that lands on my chest like a concrete block. Mrs. Patterson selling under pressure, moving to assisted living, probably dying of a broken heart. They're not just stealing property. They're killing people. Harold nods grimly. And you're the first person who's fought back hard enough to threaten their whole operation. I think about Tom's burned garage, Janet's closed studio, Harold's IRS audit. They're going to escalate until they destroy me, or I destroy them first. That evening, I spread Harold's evidence across my kitchen table next to the 1887 federal patents. The contrast is perfect. 138-year-old federal protection versus modern organized crime. I call Agent Morgan. I've got everything. Federal waterway protection, proof of organized real estate fraud, evidence of 17 victims over 5 years. How solid is the evidence? Bank records, corporate filings, deed transfers, death certificates. In Marcus, the federal protection is ironclad. Every action they've taken violates federal commerce law. What's our next move? We stop hiding. Tomorrow morning, we go public with everything. The war is about to become very public. The concrete-filled canoe floating in my lake looks like a gray tombstone. But staring at it, I remember something my grandfather taught me about dealing with bullies. Marcus, sometimes you fight fire with fire. Sometimes you fight fire with a bigger fire. Time to build a bigger fire. I call Harold. Emergency meeting, my place. 1 hour. Harold arrives with a banker's box full of documents, hands shaking like autumn leaves. Marcus, I've been up all night, copying everything before they lock me out completely. What I found, Jesus. Janet shows up with her yoga mat bag, but instead of workout clothes, she's packed flyers and a portable printer. I've been calling neighbors since 5 a.m. Everyone's ready to fight. Tom pulls up in his insurance adjuster's rental car. His truck's still a melted skeleton. I brought maps, he says, spreading hand-drawn property surveys across my kitchen table. Been documenting their targets for months. The smell of Harold's nervous sweat mixes with Janet's lavender oil and the lingering ash from my boathouse. My living room has become resistance headquarters. Show me what you found, I tell Harold. He opens the banker's box like he's handling explosives. They've been doing this for years, Marcus. Look at these payment records. $47,000 to Rick's company over 2 years. But here's the thing I learned working bank audits for 30 years. When someone steals this much money this systematically, they always keep detailed records. Criminals are surprisingly good accountants. The spreadsheets tell the whole story. Every fake violation, every fraudulent fine, every forced sale. Harold's banking background shows in how he's organized everything. Chronological, cross-referenced, impossible to dispute. Janet discovers something while making her neighbor calls. Marcus, I talked to Linda Morrison from Delilah's previous neighborhood. Same exact pattern there. Move in, take over HOA, target expensive properties, force sales, disappear. She's done this in 3 communities that Linda knows about. Tom's been researching contractor licenses while waiting for his insurance settlement. Growing up in my dad's construction business taught me to verify every credential. Rick's environmental consulting license expired in 2019. His structural engineering certification never existed. I learned the hard way to check these things after a fake inspector nearly shut down my landscaping business in another town. That's when my phone rings. Channel 7 News. Mr. Hoffman, Sarakim, investigative reporter. We received multiple tips about organized fraud in your neighborhood. Could we schedule an interview? Word is spreading faster than we planned. Agent Morgan calls an hour later. Marcus, we traced those shell companies Harold documented. This scheme spans 4 counties, at least $12 million in fraudulent property transfers. They target properties with historical federal protections, specifically research which homeowners don't know their rights, then exploit that ignorance. I'm staring at my 1887 federal survey, remembering my grandfather's advice about researching property history. He always said, the older the deed, the stronger the rights. Government gave away a lot of protection back then they forgot to take back. That's why I'd spent weeks at the courthouse when I first bought this place. Old habits from helping grandfather resolve farm boundary disputes. That evening, something unexpected happens. I'm grilling dinner when cars start pulling into my driveway. Eleanor from 3 houses down brings homemade cookies. Bob crosses the lake in his fishing boat carrying a hand-painted sign, Federal Waterway, Delilah Free Zone. Frank, the electrician, has been documenting building code violations all day. My 40 years wiring houses taught me to spot unpermitted work. Delilah's pool installation violates 5 environmental regulations. No permits, no inspections, built directly over the drainage easement. Rita, the retired teacher, discovered financial fraud while helping her neighbors understand their HOA statements. I've been building the Maple Street apartments for 3 years. They're not even part of our HOA. I spent 30 years teaching kids to check their work. Same principle applies to checking HOA finances. By sunset, 17 neighbors are scattered across my lawn like a peaceful invasion. The sound of quiet conversation mixes with loons calling across the lake. Someone brought guitar music. Kids are skipping stones while adults plan revolution. Harold organizes our strategy with the precision of someone who spent decades balancing corporate books. Emergency HOA meeting tomorrow. I'll present the financial evidence. Janet handles community outreach. Tom documents all property violations. Marcus presents the federal waterway protection. Janet's already rewritten HOA bylaws requiring transparency and accountability. 30 years teaching high school government classes finally pays off. Agent Morgan calls as everyone's leaving. Federal marshals serve arrest warrants tomorrow afternoon, but we want the community to see the evidence first. Let them understand who they've been living with. Standing on my dock after everyone leaves, I can smell autumn victory in the air. Tomorrow, Willowbrook gets its neighborhood back. I wake at 5 a.m. to the sound of heavy machinery. Not chainsaws this time, bulldozers. Through my bedroom window, I see Rick operating a massive excavator, digging trenches across the road leading to my property. Behind him, 3 county trucks are installing concrete barriers and road closed, environmental hazard signs. They're literally isolating me from the world. I throw on clothes and run outside. The smell of diesel exhaust and churned earth fills the morning air. My beautiful lake view now includes industrial earth-moving equipment destroying everything in sight. Rick, what the hell are you doing? He doesn't shut off the engine, just yells over the noise. Emergency utility work. Contaminated groundwater requires immediate isolation. A county supervisor in a hard hat approaches me with official paperwork. Mr. Hoffman, environmental protection requires cutting access until hazmat teams can assess contamination levels. Contamination from what? Your lake, sir. Test results showed dangerous bacteria levels requiring immediate quarantine. I pull out my phone and show him Dr. Kim's university lab results. The ones proving my water is pristine. These are certified lab results showing 0 contamination. He barely glances at my phone. Sir, County Health Department trumps private testing. This is public safety. That's when I notice the mini twist. While I'm arguing with the supervisor, Rick's excavator isn't just blocking the road. He's digging toward my lake, creating a drainage channel that will empty my water into the storm system. You're not isolating contamination. You're draining my lake. Rick's grin is visible even from 50 yards away. I call Agent Morgan immediately. They're draining Lake Serenity under fake Environmental Emergency Authority. Are they on your property? The drainage channel crosses my boundary line. That's destruction of federal waterway infrastructure. I'm sending marshals now. But now means 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, Rick can drain half my lake. I grab my grandfather's surveying equipment from the garage, tools I learned to use helping him resolve farm boundary disputes. I've got GPS coordinates for every property marker, every easement, every federal boundary. I march up to Rick's excavator with my surveying transit and start shooting precise measurements. The drainage channel he's digging crosses into federal waterway jurisdiction by exactly 47 feet. Rick, I yell over the engine noise. You're violating federal waterway boundaries. He shuts off the excavator. The sudden silence feels like held breath. What boundaries? I show him the 1887 Federal Survey map with GPS coordinates. This drainage work crosses federal jurisdiction by 47 feet. That's destruction of navigable waterway infrastructure. The county supervisor examines my survey equipment, clearly recognizing professional-grade instruments. Sir, where did you get these measurements? 30 years helping my grandfather resolve property disputes. Every boundary marker on this property is GPS coordinated to federal standards. That's when sirens start wailing in the distance. 2 federal marshal vehicles roar up my driveway, followed by Agent Morgan and an EPA enforcement team. The smell of rubber and dust fills the air as they brake hard near Rick's excavator. Agent Morgan steps out carrying a federal court injunction. Richard Castellanos, you're in violation of federal waterway protection statutes. Cease all excavation immediately. Rick climbs down from his machine, face pale as concrete. I'm following county orders. County has no authority over federal waterways. This drainage work constitutes destruction of federal infrastructure. The EPA agent examines Rick's drainage channel with professional instruments. This would have drained approximately 60% of lake volume within 3 hours. Classic environmental sabotage pattern. But here's where they spring their counterattack. The county supervisor pulls out his radio and calls for backup. We need sheriff's department assistance. Federal agents are interfering with emergency environmental protection. Within minutes, 3 sheriff's cruisers arrive. Suddenly, my property becomes a jurisdiction standoff. Federal marshals versus county sheriff. EPA agents versus county environmental officers. Sheriff Morrison, a man I've never met, approaches Agent Morgan. Ma'am, county has legal authority over environmental emergencies. Your federal agents need to stand down. Sheriff, this is a federally protected waterway. County has no jurisdiction. County attorney says otherwise. Agent Morgan pulls out her phone and makes a call. 2 minutes later, she hands the phone to Sheriff Morrison. Federal prosecutor wants to speak with you. I watch Morrison's face change as he listens. His confident authority melts into worried confusion. Yes, sir. Yes, I understand. Federal jurisdiction confirmed. He hands the phone back to Agent Morgan, then turns to the county supervisor. Pack it up. We're done here. As the county trucks retreat, Rick makes one final desperate move. He climbs back into his excavator and tries to finish the drainage channel before marshals can stop him. The sound of diesel engines roaring to life echoes across my lake like mechanical thunder. Rick's excavator lurches forward like a metal dinosaur, bucket raised to strike the final blow against my lake. But Federal Marshal Rodriguez moves faster than I thought possible for a man in a bulletproof vest. Federal agents, shut down that equipment immediately. Rick keeps digging. The sound of metal tearing earth echoes across the water as lake water starts trickling into his drainage channel. Rodriguez draws his sidearm. Sir, step away from the machinery. That's when Rick makes the stupidest decision of his criminal career. He swings the excavator bucket toward the federal agents. 3 marshals tackle him simultaneously. The excavator engine dies with a mechanical whine, leaving only the sound of handcuffs clicking and Rick screaming about constitutional rights. Agent Morgan examines the drainage damage. He got about 30 feet of channel dug. Lake's holding steady, but this was designed to drain the entire waterway within hours. I'm documenting everything with my phone when it rings. Delilah, voice shaking with rage. Marcus, you've made a terrible mistake. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Rick's in federal custody for destroying navigable waterway infrastructure. Rick was following county orders. You're the one breaking federal law by harboring environmental hazards. What environmental hazards? Check your email. I hang up and open my phone. New message from Environmental Protection Services with official-looking attachments. Water analysis showing my lake contains deadly E. coli bacteria. Structural engineering reports claiming my dock is an imminent collapse hazard. Soil contamination studies proving my property threatens groundwater for 3 counties. Every single document looks professionally formatted with government letterhead, official stamps, and certified signatures. Agent Morgan reads over my shoulder. These are incredibly sophisticated forgeries. Professional-grade document fraud. Can you prove they're fake? We'll need to trace the digital signatures and cross-reference the certification numbers. That takes time. But I remember something from my grandfather's stories about fighting the county over farm drainage rights. He always said, when they bring you fake papers, you bring them real lawyers. I call the number listed on the environmental reports. A professional-sounding woman answers. Environmental Protection Services. How may I help you? I'd like to verify some test results for Lake Serenity, Willowbrook Estates. Certainly, sir. Reference number. I read the number from the fake report. I'm sorry, sir. That reference number doesn't exist in our system. Could you check again? This is an official environmental hazard report. Sir, our company doesn't provide environmental testing services. We're a document printing company in Buffalo. I put the call on speaker so Agent Morgan can hear. Her smile could power the neighborhood. That afternoon, everything escalates simultaneously. Channel 7 News arrives with cameras just as Delilah pulls into my driveway, driving a county environmental enforcement vehicle she's somehow commandeered. Reporter Sarah Kim starts interviewing me about federal waterway protection while Delilah marches up my driveway, shouting about media interference with environmental emergency response. Mr. Hoffman, Sarah asks, how does it feel to discover your property has federal protection against HOA harassment? Before I can answer, Delilah interrupts. This man is harboring deadly bacteria that threaten every child in this neighborhood. The media needs to evacuate immediately. Sarah turns her camera toward Delilah. Ma'am, could you state your name and title for our viewers? Delilah Winterborn, HOA President and Emergency Environmental Coordinator. This property contains dangerous contamination requiring immediate federal intervention. What's your environmental certification number? Delilah freezes like a deer in headlights. Agent Morgan steps into camera view. Ma'am, there's no such thing as emergency environmental coordinator, and the contamination reports you filed contain forged federal signatures. That's not true. Rick provided certified analysis. Richard Castellanos is currently in federal custody for environmental terrorism and document fraud. The moment Delilah realizes she's being recorded confessing to federal crimes on live television is beautiful. Her face cycles through shock, rage, and pure panic in about 3 seconds. Sarah Kim, sensing blood in the water, presses harder. Mrs. Winterborn, how do you respond to allegations that you've systematically defrauded elderly homeowners across multiple communities? This interview is over. Delilah tries to grab the camera. That's when Federal Marshal Rodriguez reappears. Delilah Winterborn, you're under arrest for conspiracy to defraud federal waterway owners, document forgery, and environmental terrorism. She actually runs, in her expensive heels and business suit across my lawn toward the lake like she's planning to swim to freedom. Rodriguez catches her before she reaches the water, but not before she trips spectacularly and faceplants in the mud next to my concrete-filled canoe. Channel 7 News gets the whole thing on camera. The sound of handcuffs clicking mixes with loons calling across the water and neighbors cheering from every yard. After months of terror, Willowbrook is finally free. But as they load Delilah into the federal vehicle, she screams one last threat. The emergency HOA meeting is still tonight. This community will vote you out. Even in handcuffs, she's still trying to win. The emergency HOA meeting happens in the Willowbrook Community Center at 7 p.m. Every seat is packed, standing room only, with neighbors I've never seen before emerging from every corner of the subdivision. The smell of coffee and tension fills the air. Harold sits at the front table with his banker's box of evidence, hands steadier than I've seen them in months. Janet's got a projector connected to her laptop, ready to display financial records for everyone to see. But here's the problem. Delilah's still technically HOA president, even from federal custody. And her supporters, the ones who've been silent through months of harassment, are here in force. Mrs. Kansky from the corner house stands up first. This meeting is illegal. Our president is being held on trumped-up federal charges. We need to postpone until proper legal representation. Sit down, Margaret. Eleanor's voice cuts through the room like a blade. We've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation. Bob pounds his fist on the table. Order. Harold called this meeting, citing financial irregularities. Let him present the evidence. Harold stands up, voice shaking but determined. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been your treasurer for 3 years. What I discovered will shock you. He starts with a projector, showing bank statements on the wall where everyone can see. In 2 years, Delilah authorized $47,000 in payments to Richard Castellanos for environmental consulting. Here's what those consultations actually bought. The screen fills with Harold's spreadsheet, fake contamination reports, fraudulent structural assessments, forged environmental permits. Each line item shows exactly how HOA money paid for fabricated evidence to terrorize homeowners. Murmurs turn to outrage as neighbors realize they've been funding their own oppression. Tom stands up next. She didn't just steal money. She destroyed lives. Mrs. Patterson sold her home for half its value based on fake contamination reports we paid for. Martha Fleming died 6 months after Delilah forced her out. Mrs. Kansky tries to interrupt. These are serious accusations without proof. I stand up, holding the 1887 Federal Survey. Here's proof. My lake has federal waterway protection dating back to territorial days. Every violation Delilah filed against me violates federal law. Every fine was illegal. Every threat was a federal crime. That's when the doors open and Agent Morgan walks in with 2 federal marshals. The room goes dead silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm FBI Agent Sarah Morgan. I'm here to inform you that your HOA president and her associate are facing federal charges for organized fraud, environmental terrorism, and elder abuse. This investigation spans 4 counties and involves over $12 million in fraudulent property transfers. The gasps echo through the community center like gunshots. Agent Morgan continues. We've identified 17 victims across multiple communities. 3 elderly residents died within months of being forced from their homes through harassment and fraudulent violations. Mrs. Kansky's face has gone pale as paper. This can't be true. Harold projects the final evidence. Corporate documents showing Delilah and Rick owned shell companies that bought every property they forced into sale, then resold for massive profits. Margaret, Eleanor says quietly, they weren't protecting property values. They were stealing properties. The room erupts. Neighbors shouting, some crying, everyone talking at once. 5 years of suppressed anger exploding simultaneously. Bob pounds the table again. Order. We need a vote. Janet stands up with a prepared motion. I move for the immediate resignation of all current board members and emergency election of new leadership with proper financial oversight. Seconded comes from 12 voices simultaneously. But Mrs. Kansky makes one last desperate play. You can't vote without proper notice. Parliamentary procedure requires. That's when Channel 7's cameras start rolling. Reporter Sarah Kim has been filming through the windows, and now she's walking into the meeting with her crew. Mrs. Kansky, Sarah says, microphone extended, how do you respond to allegations that you knew about the fraudulent violations and help cover them up? Margaret freezes like a rabbit in headlights. I never. This is harassment. Agent Morgan steps forward. Ma'am, we have documented evidence of your involvement in several fraudulent violation proceedings. You'll need to come with us for questioning. As federal agents escort Mrs. Kansky outside, the community center erupts in applause. 5 years of fear and oppression ending with the sound of handcuffs and justice. Bob calls for the vote. All in favor of removing the current board and establishing new leadership. 43 hands shoot up simultaneously. Only 2 abstentions, people too shocked to move. Eleanor stands up, voice strong despite her 78 years. I nominate Harold for treasurer, Janet for secretary, and Marcus for president. I don't want to be president, I say quickly. I just want to fish in peace. Bob grins. Then I nominate you for Waterway Protection Officer, first position of its kind in HOA history. The vote is unanimous. As we're filing out, Agent Morgan pulls me aside. "Marcus, this is the largest HOA fraud case in FBI history. You just helped us dismantle an organized crime operation." Walking home under stars reflecting on my lake, I can finally smell freedom in the autumn air. 6 months later, I'm sitting on my rebuilt dock, watching the sunrise paint Lake Serenity gold. The water is so clear, I can see Base swimming 20 feet down, completely unbothered by the kayakers from the new community recreation program. Delilah got 7 years in federal prison. Rick got 5 years plus restitution payments that'll keep him broke until he's 70. Mrs. Kansky pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and got 2 years probation. Turns out she was just scared, not evil. The HOA recovery was swift and satisfying. Harold's forensic accounting recovered $31,000 in stolen funds, which we used to install proper playground equipment and repair the roads Delilah had neglected while paying Rick's fake consulting fees. Janet transformed from yoga instructor to community organizer, establishing transparency requirements that make our HOA budget more public than most city governments. Every expenditure over $50 requires homeowner approval. No more blank checks for tyrants. Tom rebuilt his landscaping business and now maintains our common areas for actual fair market rates. His garage fire insurance settlement led him by better equipment, and the publicity from Channel 7's investigative series brought him customers from 3 counties. Eleanor became our unofficial neighborhood historian, documenting the stories of families Delilah destroyed so this never happens again. She's working with the county to establish support services for elderly residents facing HOA harassment. The best part, we discover my lake wasn't unique. The county contains 17 other properties with similar federal waterway protections. Knowledge that's already helped 3 other homeowners fight bogus HOA violations. Eleanor created a federal property rights workshop that teaches people how to research their own land grants. My concrete-filled canoe became a garden planter in the community center courtyard. Kids use it for hide-and-seek while their parents attend HOA meetings where actual democracy happens. The federal investigation expanded beyond Willowbrook. Agent Morgan's team identified 43 victims across 6 counties, recovering over $8 million in fraudulent property transfers. The case study is now taught at FBI training academies as an example of organized real estate fraud. But the real victory is smaller and more personal. Mrs. Patterson moved back to Willowbrook. The stress-related health problems that forced her into assisted living disappeared once she was home near the lake. She tends the community garden now and teaches children about local wildlife. Martha Fleming's family sued Delilah's operation for wrongful death. The settlement funded a scholarship program for students studying environmental law, ensuring future lawyers understand how federal protections work. Last month, we had our first annual Federal Waterway Festival. Families from across the county came to learn about property rights, enjoy clean lake swimming, and celebrate the power of community organizing. The smell of barbecue and the sound of children's laughter replaced years of tension and fear. I established the Lake Serenity Veterans Retreat Program using money from my federal lawsuit settlement. Combat veterans dealing with PTSD spend weekends here learning to fish, processing trauma in peaceful surroundings, and discovering that sometimes fighting back against bullies is the best therapy. Harold leads financial literacy workshops for seniors, teaching them to recognize HOA fraud and document violations properly. His banker's precision makes him perfect for helping elderly residents protect their homes. The community garden produces vegetables that feed 12 families year-round. Tom's landscaping expertise transformed and used common areas into productive green space that actually brings neighbors together instead of dividing them. Channel 7's documentary about our case won a regional Emmy. Sarah Kim visits occasionally to check on our progress and has become unofficial media advisor for other communities fighting HOA corruption. My morning fishing routine resumed without concrete-filled canoes or surveillance cameras. The sound of loons calling across calm water has replaced the diesel roar of excavators and chainsaws. Peace tastes better when you fought for it. The federal government designated Lake Serenity as a protected historical waterway park, ensuring no future HOA can threaten it. My property became part of environmental education programs, teaching children about water conservation and federal land protection. But sitting here watching sunrise reflect off clear water, remembering the terror and triumph of the past year, I realized the real lesson isn't about federal law or HOA fraud. It's about what happens when ordinary people refuse to accept injustice and fight back with knowledge, community, and stubborn determination. What's your HOA nightmare story? Drop a comment below. You might have more legal protection than you realize. And hit that subscribe button if you want to see more David versus Goliath victories where the little guy wins with the right knowledge and strategy. Sometimes the best defense against petty tyrants isn't backing down. It's knowing the law better than they do. That's a wrap for today's episode on HOA Stories. If you enjoyed watching Karma in action, smash that like button, comment your thoughts, and let us know if you've dealt with HOA madness too. Subscribe so you won't miss the next HOA meltdown we post.